On this episode of The Best of Our Knowledge, researchers are using microbes to create tiny nanowires, technology that could be used to sniff out disease. We'll speak with a researcher from the University of Massachusetts Amherst about the study. A new state-of-the-art cancer treatment is available to Vermont residents, and student advocates lobby for financial aid dollars in New York State. These stories and more next on The Best of Our Knowledge. Welcome to The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm your host, Lucas Willard. How strong is your sniffer? Scientists at the University of Massachusetts Amherst have invented an electric nose with the help of specialized bacteria. These noses can be used to detect tiny amounts of chemicals associated with certain diseases and health conditions. One of the researchers that worked on the breakthrough is UMass Distinguished Professor of Microbiology Derek Lovely. He calls himself a mud microbiologist.
I basically grew up in science playing with mud.
The specially designed bacteria behind the research are equipped with the ability to produce nanowires. Think a wire, like the kind that brings power to your lights, but 10,000 times thinner than a human hair. Derek Lovely explains.
Nanowire is a extremely thin filament with nanometer diameter. So in our case, we're working with wires that are only 3 nanometers across. So that's, say, 1/10,000th the width of a hair. They can be comprised of any type of material, often metal, sometimes silicon. In our case, they're comprised of a biological material.
And this is because at the cellular level, there's a lot of electrical activity going on.
Right. In some particular microorganisms, that's true. And we discovered that one organism in particular, known as Geobacter, expresses these nanowires that are extruded out from the cell so it can make electrical connections with its environment.
In this research, is this actually a process of having this bacteria produce nanowires for a specific purpose, actually engineering, choosing the kinds of nanowires that you want to be grown?
Right. In this case, we actually designed a bacterium specifically to express the nanowires. So we took a gene from one microbe known as Geobacter, put it into another microbe, and then tailored that gene so that the nanowires that were expressed would be specific for sensing different compounds of interest.
Okay, so using these nanowires, they can be used to detect certain kinds of substances or chemicals.
That's right. So for proof of concept, we focused on several common molecules that are diagnostic of disease and also important in the environment to just see how the method would work.
Say that this is used in a kind of a test environment. What actually would be going on, and how could using nanowires be used to detect something like a disease or a certain chemical?
Right. The nanowires are an integral part of an electronic device. So they're spanning electrical connections. When the molecule of interest passes by, it binds to the nanowire. That changes the electrical response of the device, so you know that compound is there. And the amount of electrical response that's obtained is in direct proportion to the amount of the chemical.
So this is like if you think of a light switch or a circuit with a light on it, like a lot of people might remember from science class. The light bulb in the experiment is not going to turn on until you have the wires actually connect with the battery on each end. You have to have that loop. So you're saying that the way that these nanowires work is in a device, when that certain chemical that's being looked for, that completes the circuit, and the nanowires help complete that information. You're like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's a positive test. What we're looking for is fit into the specific nanowires.
That's basically correct. So there's always a small amount of current going through the wire. When it detects the compound, more current goes through. So it's almost like, to use your light analogy, now the light gets brighter. We have more current going through. We get a higher response, and we know there's more of that chemical there.
So what's the potential of this technology? And is this something that we could see, say at a home test kit? People are very used to and familiar with COVID home test kits, for example. Um, but is this something that could be utilized in a similar way?
This would be an electronic device, so a little more sophisticated, at least at this point, than the COVID test. But hopefully, it would be a wearable monitor. So you could have routine monitoring of, say, your breath or skin to detect molecules that might be indicative of a disease.
So if you have, say, an electronic device on your wrist, then you could have a screen and it could tell you this is happening. And I think that could be useful for people perhaps with diabetes or other conditions that need to be monitored frequently.
That's right. So, especially if you have a disease or a risk for a chronic disease, this can be an early warning that now something's out of kilter with your biology, and you need to take care of it in one way or another with medication or see your doctor, that type of thing.
So, how soon could technology like this be more widely adapted, and where is your research headed next?
Okay, so our research is so far it's just been at the basic proof of concept. I'm always reluctant to make the prediction when something would go to market. I'm not an entrepreneur. I've learned that from past experience. I'm more of a basic scientist. But we're very excited about the potential for this, and we think it has the possibility of very broad applications.
So, all kinds of health conditions, all kinds of diseases in this monitoring kind of application.
That's correct.
And I was also wondering a little bit about your background and what led you, Derek, to this research. What was the question that you sought to answer? How did you decide to jump on the team to start doing this research on nanowires? What's your background?
Yeah, in reality, I have no business working on a health monitor. I'm a mud microbiologist. I study microorganisms that live in soils and sediments. But we discovered this one microbe, Geobacter, that remarkably makes these electrically conductive protein nanowires. So it was just kind of a natural jump to start thinking about applications. I've been very fortunate. I have an excellent collaborator, June Yao, in the electrical engineering department here at UMass. And we were able to team up then that in my lab we can make and design the wires. June has the electronics expertise to miniaturize this and actually make the devices.
Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Is there anything else that you think is important to mention?
I just would like to mention that this is a collaborative effort with June Yao's lab in electrical engineering. It takes a lot of different expertise to pull something like this together. And I think we're really fortunate at UMass to have that kind of interdisciplinary environment that allowed us to accomplish that.
Derek Lovely is Distinguished Professor of Microbiology at UMass Amherst. Lovely, a self-described mud microbiologist, is an author of new research on sustainably sourced microbial nanowires, published in the journal Biosensors and Bioelectrics. You are listening to the best of our knowledge. This is The Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Lucas Willard. A cutting-edge treatment uses the body's own immune system to destroy cancer cells. The University of Vermont Cancer Center in Burlington is joining a handful of facilities across the country that offer the treatment. More details now from The Best of Our Knowledge's Pat Bradley.
The treatment, called CAR T-cell therapy, was approved by the FDA in 2017 for blood cancer treatment. Following treatment, depending on the cancer type, 50 to 80% of patients have no detectable cancer remaining. The therapy was discovered and developed at the University of Pennsylvania. The UVM Cancer Center's CAR T-cell program is led by a member of that original research team. Dr. James Gerson says the groundbreaking therapy has completely changed the lives of patients.
The center treated hundreds of patients, and I treated close to 100 of my own personal patients with this therapy. in a variety of different settings, and saw dramatic improvement for many of them. For all intents and purposes, many of these patients with advanced cancer who had really no other treatment options ended up being cured from their cancer after receiving this treatment. And if you look back at patients who were treated 10 years ago under research protocols with the first CAR T-cell therapy, majority of them remain in remission, and we really think that that is going to equate to a long-term cure.
UVM Cancer Center Director Dr. Randall Holcomb says the CAR T-cell therapy is an important addition to the center's ability to treat patients.
We pride ourselves in offering state-of-the-art cancer treatments, and it's important to offer cutting-edge therapies such as CAR T therapy, which has been approved by the Food and Drug Administration to treat blood-borne type cancers such as lymphoma. This is a very significant development for the Cancer Center here to reach people with these diseases who live in Vermont and northern New York.
Dr. Gerson says CAR T-cell, or chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy, is an innovative high-tech process that uses the patient's own immune system.
I like to tell my patients that this is really a living therapy that they're going to be treated with. The first step after identifying a patient who's eligible for this therapy is to remove the immune cells from the body. And the immune cells that we're looking for specifically are called T cells. These T cells are then engineered to target cancer by creating a new receptor on their cell surface that can recognize cancer cells. The T cells are expanded, and then they're eventually given back to the patient, sort of similar to a blood transfusion. On a cellular level, that allows the T cell to engage with the cancer cell and then kill it.
The therapy is only approved for blood cancers, such as leukemias and multiple myelomas, a cancer of white plasma blood cells. Dr. Gerson explains that CAR T-cell was first effectively tested in lymphomas.
It has been tried, and there's a lot of interest in using this in solid tumors, such as breast cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer, etc. And for a variety of reasons we don't quite understand, to be completely honest, it doesn't work as well for non-blood cancers, but this is an area of active research. And as a follow-up to that, we are very excited to begin research in the CAR T-cell space after we've gotten our commercial program up and running and really offering patients clinical trials that might be on the forefront of discovery, both in blood cancers as well as in solid cancer.
The typical treatment cost is about $400,000, and Cancer Center officials say insurance companies cannot refuse coverage because the treatment is FDA approved. Other facilities that offer the treatment include the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center, Dana-Farber in Boston, the Yale School of Medicine, the Wilmot Cancer Center at the University of Rochester Medical Center, and the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo. Reporting for the best of our knowledge, I'm Pat Bradley.
You're listening to The Best of Our Knowledge. Moving away now from biomedical research, the New York State budget debate for fiscal year 2024 is well underway. In our continuing coverage of how state funding affects students, a trip now to the New York State Capitol in Albany. On Tuesday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, much more than love was in the air, as students and faculty representing more than 40 colleges and universities in the Empire State bussed to Albany to take part in Student Aid Advocacy Day. The Best of Our Knowledge's Jody Cowan brings us more.
According to the National Center for Education Statistics, more than 85% of enrolled students nationwide receive some form of financial aid. New York ranks third in total student financial aid dollars, spending $1.16 billion annually, about an average of $1,371 per undergraduate student. With state budget season underway, advocates with New York Student Aid Alliance want to protect the programs that make higher education a reality for many students. Ajuwano Gabagba is director of the Collegiate Science and Technology Entry Program at Dutchess County Community College in Poughkeepsie. He said C-STEP is facing a proposed funding cut.
We heard that for 2024, the program was going to get a fund cut for 3%, and we would like for the legislators to advocate on our behalf so that does not happen. Instead, we are asking for a 20% increase because as it is now, the program financially, there's so many we give to the students, but we do not have necessary fund to support them. So if we could get the increase, we will run the program better, and the student will benefit from it better.
C-STEP provides mentorship opportunities and tutoring services for students of all backgrounds. Gbagba says more funding is needed to support outreach efforts.
The resources that we have, for instance, a student majoring in the STEM, we have tutoring for them. Right now we have a lot of students that need tutoring, but we do not have necessary funds to cover that. We have research opportunities. We have research mentors who are ready to take on students, and we do not have enough funding to support or for compensation for either the mentors or the students.
In addition to teachers and administrators, large groups of students filled the halls of Albany's Legislative Office Building, intent on sharing their stories and pushing their representatives to action. 3 students traveled from Hamilton College in Clinton, New York, to advocate for aid funding. Amaris Martins is a double major in pre-law government and philosophy.
These are all programs that go towards low-income students, but also students that are educationally disadvantaged. Fundings like these do help support us. They pay for our books. They give us funding for meals and stuff like that. And it also makes college more affordable. So we are just advocating to get that funding back, but also to increase that funding. With the current inflation that's going on, the funding isn't really doing much for us. So we're just advocating for that.
Waiting for their chance to speak directly to state representatives, fellow student and pre-law and government major Jasmine Florenzo intends to rally for as long as it takes.
We're going to keep demanding what we're asking for because this doesn't just end with us. This ends with the generations that come after us. And if it doesn't go the way that we want it to, we're just going to keep demanding, keep showing up. We'll be here every other day if we have to. But this is our education and our future in the line, but also the future generations to come.
Iman Rahman, a double major in science and creative writing, said it was her first time lobbying at the Capitol. For her, seeing the expansive college community come together for a unifying cause is highly encouraging.
I'm really happy to just see the support and the community that we all have here, both at the same time having our own needs and having our own demands that we're hoping to be seen and heard. It's really incredible to see. Coming from these low-income backgrounds, as well as these marginalized communities, we are not given the same opportunities as a lot of students at our PWI school. And it's this idea of putting us to the same level, showing that we are worth it and we deserve to take up space there, even though it may seem like we don't.
Yeah.
But we are, and we will continue to, and the future will come.
Advocates say students have been highly impacted by unemployment, inflation, and other effects of the pandemic. Dr. Ronaldo Alba, Associate Director of C-STEP and Doctor of Education at Fordham University, says the advocates ask for $7 million from the governor's total proposed budget of $227 billion is more than reasonable.
Research is now coming out describing and painting the picture of what actually was lost in terms of learning, achievement, across the metrics that would indicate that our students are progressing, better prepared for the next step. It's a tremendous investment and opportunity that we have before us. We've served close to 500,000 students between the programs. 500,000 students in our 35 plus years of being around. So a modest increase of 7 million. I consider it as a tremendous opportunity to make a large-scale investment with that money.
The New York Student Aid Alliance says with the need for state support so crucial for students' futures, the college community is standing united for more aid funding as fiscal year 2024 state budget negotiations continue. For the best of our knowledge, I'm Jody Cowan.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul has proposed a record $31.5 billion in school aid for the upcoming school year. It's about a 7% increase from last year, and it would be the most the state has ever spent on education. But inflation and the teacher shortage could eat up most of the increase, according to New York superintendents. North Country Public Radio's Amy Fire-Eisel has more.
Usually, educators don't feel the state is spending enough on schools. This year, it's a bit different. Stephen Todd is the district superintendent of the Jefferson, Lewis, Hamilton, Herkimer, Oneida BOCES.
This is my 29th year in education, and I can tell you this type of a scenario where the governor's proposal is just what we asked for is not always what we have seen.
Governor Hochul proposed pretty much exactly the budget she'd promised, a 7% increase from last year. Todd says they're used to a lowball offer and the state legislature bargaining up.
We're grateful and we're glad that we're at a place where we're not starting the budget discussion playing defense.
One of the big ticket items in this year's budget is foundation aid. That's a baseline pot of money each school gets per year. Poorer districts get more from the state.
On its simplest level, it is designed to be a progressive system of school funding that provides more money for districts that need more money to work with their kids because their own communities do not have as large a tax base to work with.
Todd says because the North Country is in a poor part of the state, foundation aid is critical. But since foundation aid was established in 2007, it's never actually been fully funded. Hochul wants to change that, and some districts could see pretty considerable jumps, says Todd.
I have some districts that will get increases that are more than 20% year over year. Districts like Watertown City School District that are getting more than 20% increases, they were among those that were heavily underfunded over the years.
Most districts will receive a flat 3% increase. That's not huge, but it is very much appreciated, says Jennifer Gaffney, the superintendent of Sackett's Harbor School District in Jefferson County.
3% right now is generous, but at the same time, districts are experiencing some hardships related to inflation and rising costs in all areas of our operations.
They need to account for pay raises for teachers, but also, Gaffney says pretty much everything they're looking to purchase for the upcoming school year is more expensive.
We're talking food for the cafeteria, we're talking institutional paper, we are talking fuel prices.
Gaffney says she doesn't think they'll have anything left over. Hochul is also proposing $100 million for post-pandemic mental health and academic supports. She also wants to increase pre-K funding by 13% and get new pre-K programs open. Gaffney says that's really exciting, but she was disappointed to see that the allotment for already existing pre-K is staying the same.
State is not giving districts any more than they did initially. And the cost of pre-K programs has progressively risen throughout the school years. And now we are finding ourselves in a position where we're having to absorb more and more of that cost, and it's becoming problematic. It's really putting a strain on our overall budget.
That budget strain is something Dale Briault, the district superintendent for the Franklin Essex Hamilton BOCES, expects many of his districts will face. That's because of inflation, but also because of the teacher shortage, which has driven up starting salaries.
Which is great for our teachers, and frankly, they deserve much more than we can ever give them. But at the end of the day, that also puts a strain on budget.
Briault says anything extra in the budget will go towards academic interventions and mental health resources. But even that's tricky when every school district is looking for another counselor or social worker.
So, right, even if we wanted to bring those people on board, a lot of times they just don't exist.
Briault says there's also an elephant in the room of what future education funding will look like now that after 16 years, Hochul wants to fully fund foundation aid.
It's kind of the proverbial dog that catches up with the mail truck. What happens next?
Remember, foundation aid is designed to give more to poorer schools.
Okay, so we're now fully funded under foundation aid. Are we just going to give everybody a percentage increase next year? Because there's a lot of experts out there that will say that applying the same percentage to every school district across the state creates one of the most inequitable situations possible. So now you're going right back to the inequities that led to the foundation aid promise in the first place.
Briault says he'll be pushing legislators to figure that out, to get some sort of clarity of what future funding will look like. He and other educators will be making requests and asking questions as the Senate and Assembly work on their version of the budget. The final budget is due April 1st.
That story from North Country Public Radio's Amy Fire-Eisel. You're listening to the best of our knowledge. And one last news item before we go. A college in New York's Adirondacks region is freezing tuition and fees for all current and incoming students. Paul Smith's College, a private institution, says it wants to make sure that rising costs don't become a barrier to a college education. Paul Smith's College interim president Dan Kelting said on March 1st, the college believes, quote, the tuition freeze will drive strong growth for the college's enrollment and bottom line, end quote. According to the College Board, tuition and fees at the college were already 20% lower than the national average for private colleges and universities in the United States. Kelting goes on to say that, quote, by breaking away from the national trend of continuously raising tuition, we ensure that rising costs don't stop an individual from attending our high-quality hands-on college that trains students in high-demand sectors, end quote. The only four-year college in the Adirondack Park, Paul Smith's is known for its studies in clean energy, culinary, forestry, and natural sciences. This is the best of our knowledge. This has been The Best of Our Knowledge, episode 1694. The Best of Our Knowledge is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio. Thanks to associate producer Jody Cowan. Our executive producer is Dr. Alan Chartok. To hear past episodes, visit our flagship station's website at wamc.org. Until next time, I'm Lucas Willard.